As Donald Trump continues to double down on his ridiculous and renewed trade war with Canada, one of our biggest and most proximate trading partners, he vacillates between being visibly triggered and visibly confused. And his ridiculous policy is also now being called out by the conservative Wall Street Journal with a series of brutal fact checks. But before we unpack all of that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, I've got several clips to play as a start from Trump's recent exchange with reporters on Air Force One, in which he is pressed about his renewed trade war with Canada.
On finance, on trade, it wasn't his strong suit. But
I know you're too social about the Canada tariffs. Can you walk through when you expect those to take effect? And can I ask why?
No, we're gonna let them know. Ronald Reagan loved tariffs. He used them sparingly, which he probably would make a mistake. He made a mistake in that. And again, I was the biggest fan of Ronald Reagan, but on finance, on trade, it wasn't his strong suit. But he liked tariffs, and they totally changed that to say that he didn't, because they're catering to the Supreme Court. Because Canada's been ripping us off for a long time, and they're not going to rip us off anymore. Canada has been ripping us off for a long time.
Why?
One of the most difficult countries to deal with has been Canada. As much as I love Canada itself and the people of Canada, they've just had a lot of bad representatives. They did a fake ad yesterday. They were caught. The Ronald Reagan Foundation was the one that caught them, and it was totally the opposite of what they said. So I don't like that. That's dirty pool, and you can't do that. And let me just tell you, they shouldn't have done it. And they've apologized, and they said, we're going to take the ad down. Well, they did it, but they did it very late. They let it play for another 2 nights, and now they took that ad down. So I don't know when it's going to kick in. We'll see, but I don't really want to discuss it.
So again, Trump is renewing this trade war with Canada because he's pissed off about an advertisement that a provincial government of Canada, not even the federal government, but the provincial government of Canada made using and invoking President Reagan's words, which again, the Wall Street Journal has some things to say about that, and this is a conservative publication. But he's pissed off by it. He's triggered by it. I wanted him to take it down. They did, but they didn't take it down quick enough. So here's some more clips, again, about Trump's rationale for his trade war with one of our biggest and most proximate trading partners.
This is an ad. That was an ad run by a provincial government in Canada. Why are you mad at the federal government?
Because whether it's provincial or Canada itself, they all knew exactly what the ad was. The Prime Minister knew, everybody knew. The Prime Minister knew what the ad was before it went on.
Will you see him in APEC? Do you want to meet with him?
I don't want to meet with him. No, I'm not going to be meeting with him for a while. No, I'm very happy with the deal we have right now with Canada. We're going to let it ride.
Okay. So he says he doesn't care that it was a provincial government decision. The federal government of Canada is who he's going to hold responsible to. He says the Prime Minister knew about it. Setting, again, the substance of that aside. Then he says, and this is important, note this. He's like, I'm not going to meet with Mark Carney. I'm not going to meet with the Canadian Prime Minister. No intention. We're just going to let it ride. We're going to let it ride. So, with that in mind, I want you to hear what he has to say just a few minutes later about that same Prime Minister and potentially meeting that same Prime Minister.
Mr. President, you talked about North Korea on your way here. Have you heard anything back from him?
I haven't mentioned it. I haven't said anything, but I'd love to meet with him if he'd like to meet. I got along great with Kim Jong-un. I liked him. He liked me. If he wants to meet, I'll be in South Korea.
So, Donald Trump is perfectly willing to meet with the North Korean dictator. I liked him. He liked me. I'm happy to meet with him. I'm not going to meet with Mark Carney, but I'm going to meet with Kim Jong-un of North Korea. Really, bro? Really? Doesn't seem to be consistent at all. But again, this is what I'm talking about. Trump is just out of control. As Mediaite reported, Trump slaps Canada with tariff hike after fraudulent ad. Caught red-handed. Canada was caught red-handed, putting up a fraudulent advertisement on Ronald Reagan's speech on tariffs. The Reagan Foundation said that they, quote, created an ad campaign using selective audio and video of President Ronald Reagan. The ad misrepresents the president radio address and, quote, did not seek nor receive permission to use and edit the remarks. The Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute is reviewing its legal options on the matter. The purpose of this fraud was Canada's hope that the United States Supreme Court will come to their rescue on tariffs that they've used for years to hurt the United States. Now the United States is able to defend itself against high and overbearing Canadian tariffs and those from the rest of the world as well. Ronald Reagan loves tariffs for the purposes of national security and the economy, but Canada said he didn't. Their advertisement was to be taken down immediately. They let it run last night during the World Series knowing it was a fraud. Because of their serious misrepresentation of the facts and hostile act, I'm increasing the tariff on Canada by 10% over and above what they are paying now. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, that's the basis for a renewed trade war with Canada. Again, one of our biggest and most proximate trading partners. Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, a Democrat. Pennsylvania is probably the most important swing state in the country. He's not happy about it. He says Canada is Pennsylvania's largest trading partner. PA companies export $14 billion to Canada every year, and Canadian companies employ over 30,000 people here in Pennsylvania. But Trump's policies are hurting our economy, jacking up prices for Pennsylvanians, and closing markets for our businesses. Now, I also want you to consider, before we get to the conservative Wall Street Journal, fact check about how Donald Trump has been talking about how the tariffs are working and the prices on groceries and energy are actually way down. They're not. You need to hear this fact check to provide the proper context for what we're going to look at from the conservative Wall Street Journal, sister publication of Fox News.
A new report out today shows that inflation is ticking up. So why is the president saying the opposite?
Grocery prices are way down. Groceries are down. Now, as you know, groceries are down. We've gotten prices way down for groceries.
For a deeper dive on this, let's turn to CNN's Daniel Dale. So, Daniel, what are the facts here?
The fact is that these claims are just not true. It wasn't true when President Trump claimed earlier this year that grocery prices were down. It's not true now. And we know that because of the new Consumer Price Index report released this morning, which showed that from August to September, grocery prices increased again by 0.3%. That followed a 0.6% increase from July to August, which was the biggest jump in 3 years. They're also up 2.7% from last September, and about half of that increase, about 1.4% in total, has happened since January, the month President Trump returned to office. Now, if you talk to if you talk to food economists, as I did, they'll tell you that there are all sorts of reasons why grocery prices might bounce around unrelated to who the president is. But they'll also tell you that it very much appears that two of this president's signature policies, specifically a crackdown on undocumented immigrants who make up a large percentage of the farm workforce, and significant tariffs on imported goods, have at least contributed to the increases that Americans are seeing in the grocery aisle.
So again, it's just a matter of fact. Trump is lying when he says that there's no inflation and that prices are actually down. No, they're up in large part because of inflation, okay? And the tariffs are what's causing inflation. Again, you heard it from Daniel Dale. The tariffs are contributing to this. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the Wall Street Journal's editorial board's assessment of the Trump versus Reagan situation on tariffs, okay, since this is, again, the catalyst for the renewed trade war with Canada. Reagan versus Trump on tariffs. The Gipper was a free trader, no matter what the current president says. The MAGA crowd likes to dismiss Ronald Reagan as irrelevant today, but apparently he still matters to Donald Trump. How else to explain Trump's tantrum against Canada after the province of Ontario invoked the Gipper on trade in a TV ad? The Ontario government had the temerity to buy ad time to run clips of Reagan's 1987 remarks warning about the dangers of protectionism. Trump pitched a social media fit in response late Thursday, claiming Ontario, quote, fraudulently used an advertisement, which is fake, featuring Ronald Reagan speaking negatively about tariffs. Trump said the ad was intended to interfere with the Supreme Court as it considers the legality of his claim that he can levy tariffs on anything he wants, for any amount he wants, whenever he wants. He immediately declared an end to trade talks with Canada. Ontario said it would pull the ad, but then it ran during a sporting event over the weekend. Trump escalated with an additional 10% tariff on Canadian goods, on top of the taxes he'd already imposed. The Supreme Court isn't likely to be influenced by anything other than law, which, again, remember, it's a conservative publication, so that's adorable, okay? But Trump's Canada's eruption is a good argument for the justices to rein in his tariff power. Trump gets angry at a TV ad and imposes on a whim a 10% tax on Americans who buy goods from their northern neighbor. Trump claims he's not a, quote, king, but on tariffs he's acting like one and without a proper delegation from the Congress, as the Constitution requires. It's striking that Trump is so worried about a TV spot featuring a president who left the White House nearly 37 years ago. Don't you know what time it is, as your apologists like to say, Mr. President? Perhaps Trump fears he's going to lose the tariff case, and maybe he also knows his tariffs are unpopular. Trump is also wrong about the Reagan speech, and he was wrong when he said on social media that, quote, Ronald Reagan loved tariffs for the purposes of national security and the economy. The Gipper was a free trader. In the 1987 speech, Reagan was trying to explain why he was making an exception for his free trade policies on semiconductor imports from Japan. We remember that speech well, and its purpose was to head off a protectionist surge in Congress. The Gipper delivered it as fear of Japanese economic dominance was reaching its political peak in the U.S. Japan is number one was the title of a popular and misguided book of the time. Democrats in Congress, led by soon-to-be presidential candidate Dick Gephardt, were threatening new tariffs. Reagan wanted to instruct the country about the damage from protectionism in the past, including from the Smoot-Hawley tariff of 1930 and how it contributed to the Great Depression. Reagan's semiconductor tariffs proved to be a mistake. Intel Corp, which lobbied for the tariffs, innovated with its 486 and 486 chips that surpassed the commodity memory chips made by Japan. The U.S. attempt at computer chip industrial policy at the time, focused around the Sematech Consortium, was a bust, as T.J. Rogers, the former CEO of Cypress Semiconductor, has explained on these pages. By the way, whatever happened to Japan is number one. It's a shame to see the Reagan Foundation, of all places, indulge Trump's peak with its statement that the speech was taken out of context. Anyone who reads the whole speech can see the Gipper favored free trade, with rare exceptions for political pragmatism and national security. Reagan also backed, long before NAFTA, a North American free trade area. That couldn't be more different than Trump, who wants tariffs as a policy rule, not the exception. Reagan knew the tariffs are taxes, while Trump pretends they're paid by foreigners. Reagan knew protectionist barriers over time breed complacency and lack of innovation. Trump thinks he's making American manufacturing great again, when really he's hurting U.S. manufacturers by burdening them with higher costs. See American companies that use aluminum or steel. Trump has been fortunate that his tariffs haven't triggered much retaliation, which has spared us from a global trade war. But the tariffs are doing economic damage by raising costs for consumers and businesses and by dampening animal spirits that should be soaring with his tax bill and deregulation. Again, folks, conservative sister publication of the Wall Street Journal, not a liberal rag. He can boast about tariffs all he wants, but he shouldn't get away with taking Reagan's trade beliefs in vain. So, there you have it. Even the conservative Wall Street Journal is pointing out that Trump is totally full of shit on this. And we will close with this, the polling on Trump's tariffs vis-a-vis the context with the new renewed trade war with Canada.
You know, we're talking about tariffs here. You're just hearing that conversation. Has Trump push for tariffs been successful in the minds of the American people?
No. No is the simple answer. I mean, I think that Americans have moved more against tariff than any other major Trump policy that he's been pushing during this second term. What are we talking about here? Well, why don't we just look at this? New tariffs on imported goods. You know, you go back to November of 2024, the majority, 52%, were in favor of it. Look at where we are now in 2025, in the fall of 2025. 60% of Americans are opposed to Trump's tariffs. So we're talking about a 4-point margin in favor, switcheroo, now to a 20-point margin against. And of course, there was all this news coming out of the World Series, right? Canada tariffs. We're not just talking China, we're talking Canada and tariffs. And get this, we're talking about just 36%, as I look at my little footnote here on the bottom, who support new tariffs against Canada. So the bottom line is this. If I were advising President Donald John Trump when it comes to his policies, I'd say step off the tariffs, at least from a political point of view, because the bottom line is it doesn't sell with the American people. It's one of the largest shifts that we have seen during Trump's second term in office.
There you have it, folks. This is a political disaster for Trump. It's objectively an economic one as well, and he seems to only be doubling down. Not good. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.